here I've got the Regen from Synclavier. It's a multi-timbral digital synth. Everything you're listening to here is from the Regen, and it's been developed by Cameron Jones, one of the original Synclavier team, so it's a true descendant of the original classics. And just in case you've been living in a cave for the past 30 years, here is an original, and here's one with all the extras. And this was a staple of top flight pro studios in the 80s, and the list of users is a who's who of musicians back then. In fact, Sting is recorded as saying he was grateful to the inventors of the Synclavier for making him a whole person, not just a mind. So what we have here is a next generation, and it creates all the classic tones and comes with a whole bunch of original patches and samples. We've also got a load of new patches covering loads of ground and demoing the scope of the sound design capabilities of this. And I've had this for a fair few months now. I didn't want to make a video when I first got it. I didn't want to demo it for demo's sake. I wanted to fully understand it and get to know it before putting anything out there. Because although Synclavier is a well-famous brand, it's part of the story that got us from analog tape to digital workstations, it is only still a boutique company, and I didn't want to misunderstand it, misrepresent it, or miss things that it can do. So I thought I'd do it justice, and I've been playing with the Osmos recently with it, because that's MPE, and this is MPE compatible. And I thought, why not do something like I did with the Osmos and take you through the various stages of ownership, from opening the box to how do I feel after a few months. And the first of those stages was definitely Fascination and Intrigue. And this is really when you get it out of the box. It's got a nice unique look with those lovely halo buttons. It's got a nice sharp screen, and I think the curved corner is a nod to the big knob on the original, which you'll notice is missing on this, although there is one you can buy from Synclavier if you want more of that vintage experience. And the whole thing's quite lightweight, but it is an all-metal construction, and it does feel like a well thought out and quality bit of kit. On the back, we've got a pair of balanced XLRs with ground lit switches, and we've got stereo 1/4-inch stereo outputs as well. We've also got a USB host for using with your DAW or an audio interface, plus we've got 4 USB connections for things like controllers or a keyboard for typing in names, which is actually really useful for giving patch names and descriptions and tags and that sort of thing. MIDI is supplied by MIDI TRS connections, and it comes with a couple of nice red 5-pin DIN to TRS adapters. We've got a MIDI in and a MIDI through. There's no MIDI out on this, as there's no onboard sequencer or knobs to send controller messages. And I've also called this section Intrigue, haven't I? And that's because when you look at it, you wonder how they've got so much in here with such a limited number of buttons. I say limited, there are 50 on here, but on the original I think there was 200. And you get these quick reference cards in the box, which at first you think, cool, they're really handy, that'll help me get started. And then you start to wonder why they've put quick reference cards with such a lot of information in the box. You know, there's a lot of info in these, and it can't possibly be this difficult to handle, can it? And it's not actually, but what it feels like is that the company is super enthusiastic and keen for you to understand the depth of it and not to miss anything. And it's obviously something that they're really proud of, I think. But it's hard to explain, but I think it's a really nice sort of personal touch, actually. Anyway, overall first impressions, very positive for me. I like that it's got a unique aesthetic, and I like that somebody's obviously spent a lot of time thinking about how to ask such a lot of a fairly small unit. So that brings us to the next stage of ownership, which for me was utter confusion. And if you watch this, you'll completely skip past this phase, because I'm about to show you something that was really simple, but had me stuck for ages. Normally when I get a new synth, I have a little play with it at the end of the day and first thing in the morning, just to have a little, a little dabble with it when I've got a few minutes spare. But I couldn't for the life of me get a sound out of this, and that's all down to the USB modes. With this, you have to go into the setup and change it from DAW to controller. If I come up to here, right, you've got to restart it in order to change the mode. But I didn't realize I had to change the mode. So if you're using it directly with a keyboard via USB, you need to put it into controller mode. If you're using 5-pin DIN, you're fine, but I ended up changing USB cables and changed the power leads, swapped out the TRS for XLR, and tried just about everything except for reading the manual. So you're going to avoid all that, but it was a proper head scratcher for a while. I do think a little note in the box would be really useful, because I know I'm not the only one to have discovered that the hard way, but at least I wasn't doing it on a live stream. So at least you'll skip this phase of confusion. Next up then, we've got understanding. Because once you've got it up and running, everything actually falls into place. It's really quite intuitive. Effectively, this has got 3 layers on it. It's got a session, which can have up to 12 tracks in it, and those 12 tracks can each have up to 12 partials. So let's just load the session in, shall we? Let's load that one. We go to session. We can see here I've got 10 tracks loaded in this, and we can select things using these buttons on the right. These change color depending on what mode you're in. So when we're in track mode, these are blue and green. So the ones I'm selecting are turning green. We can solo them and they turn yellow. So loads of visual feedback on this, especially with this nice screen as well. Press this, we've swapped it to partial mode. So if I come back here, we're looking at track 8 or tone 8 or timbre 8. And that's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 partials in it. And then we can solo each of those partials, so we can select a number together. And you'll notice that we've got red and blue boxes. The red boxes are for partials and the blue boxes are for tracks. So when we go into track mode, we're looking at things to do with the tracks. And when we're in partial mode, we're looking at things to do with the partials. If I come over to a track, we're now looking at track 8. If I come to the partial, I'm now looking at partial 1 on track 8. Now looking at all the partials on track 8. So navigating through partials and tracks is pretty simple. If you want to see the session view, hit that and we can see exactly what's happening on all the tracks. If we wanted to split a track across a keyboard, for example, these are playing all the notes because I've got them on separate MIDI channels, but we can change the high note and the low note. Stuff like that to create a nice spread across the keyboard, depending on how you set up your track. Because it could be a stack of 12 different tones that you're playing at different ranges across the keyboard. But I'm just trying to show how you navigate through it. But sticking with these buttons on the right for a minute, we go into the waves, for example. If we go and make it an additive wave, then we go across to edit or define it, we can select which of the harmonics we're editing with this as well. And I'll show what I'm talking about here in the next stage of ownership, but I'm just really trying to show you how the interface works, because this is what you get to grips with straight away. So just to recap, we've got tracks, got 10 tracks playing in that intro tune. I won't call it a track. And each of those tracks can have a number of partials. So on track 1, go into the partials. It's only got a single partial on track 1. That doesn't sound like it's doing much, but if we go into the wave, we've got in here 50 samples. And on there, I'll go into this in a second, but we could have different layers for different samples as well, so it gets really quite complex if you want it to. But going back to the interface, there are things that you have to look in the manual for. There's no way you'd realize that hitting levels and hitting MIDI would take you into MIDI CC controller setup, for example. So with this, what we've got here is track volume. Let's use one of these to change the cutoff. So hit cutoff. There we go. So that's now assigned. But you wouldn't know that unless you looked in the manual. Other little things like hitting vibrato and tremolo at the same time brings up the modulation matrix, which we've got loads of slots in there, loads of things you can do. Edit from, so there are sources, edit to, and there are destinations, and you can see things are flashing. So to go to the filter, get to the filter cutoff straight away, or if we want to go to the chorus effect. So once you're in there, it's not that difficult, but there will be things that you have to refer to the manual for. There will be some almost like hidden functions, but you're going to get that with something that's that complex, but only this small. So this button here, when it's on blue, it means we're going back, and now we're not flashing because we're not assigning anything. Go back again. So red means enter, and blue means go back. And if we do something like go to the effects, just to show you here that on each of these, you haven't necessarily just got a single page, you've got many pages. So we flick through them. As we flick through them, we can see these are changing. But in the effects, for example, we go into the effects filter, and now we've gone down a level. So it's almost like this has got branches coming off it. So we can change the filter cutoff, put it on a high pass, change the cutoff amount, change the resonance, and then we can move on to the reverbs. But this is all within effects. So if I come back again, I'm back on the main level of the menu, as it were, because this isn't blue anymore. It sounds complex, but it isn't really. If we go to the filter, that's another one that's got a sub-menu on it. Filter type, 24, filter setup. We've now dropped down into the filter setup menu. So we've got a back button to go back up to that level. So imagine each of these, or some of these, have got different branches coming off them. So yes, it can be a bit complex, but you just sort of get into the rhythm. You get into the whoever designed its head, and it just seems to fall into place after a couple of hours. I'm not going to go into everything here in all the little shortcuts that I've found, but really just when you get this, you do enter a discovery phase of, oh, okay, that's how it all sits together. And that's how it all works. You got a session's got tracks in it, and each of those tracks is made up of partials. So the next thing you try and do is work out what exactly is going on with the partials. And that brings us to the next phase, which is discovery. So I'm going to clear this session. We go to session, erase session. I'm not wiping it off the drive or anything, or off the SD card. I'm just clearing the banks. I'll go into the user waves. Flick through down to, where should I go? I'm trying to think where it's saved, what I'm looking for. It was in Starsky Sounds. Nice little logos that threw on there. You can get the Starsky's Prodigy one. That's samples of my Prodigy. You can get that on their site. It's a free download. Sampled oscillators from a Prodigy. Anyway, let's go into Starsky Sounds. Little description. I think it's this one. Different basses. Let's load that one. So we've got 7 partials in here, and what is a partial? You can almost think of it as an oscillator. So we've got an oscillator there, but an oscillator with its own envelope and with its own modulator and bits and bobs on top. So almost like a whole synth engine in itself, or almost like a whole synth voice. But this has got the additional filters on top, which the original didn't have. So it's a little bit more complex. So you have the oscillator with its envelopes, and then over the top of that, so acting on everything in here, we've got the arpeggiator and different modes and the filter and stuff. So 6 ways to produce a tone on the Synclavier Regen. The first is to use the additive engine. This uses harmonics to create a square from load of sines. Second is a classic FM, a sine modulating a sine. This one is a square sample from a Moog Prodigy filtered by the Synclavier. And the next is a virtual analog using the onboard Subtractive Synth engine. Then we've got a straight up sample. This is from a Mini Moog. And then finally, we've got resampled WAV that changes it to frames so the timing doesn't change as you play different keys. Well, I bet that woke you up if you were nodding off. And the reason I did that little clip there was because it's taken me so long to actually do this in a nice light touch sort of way, because there's so much in here and I don't really want to be an instruction manual for it, but I want to give a nice overview. So looking at partial 1, I've made the square wave using additive synthesis. And if we go into wave here, we've got additive, we've got subtractive, which is like virtual analog, samples, and hybrid. And hybrid is like a PPG wave term. So it takes a sample and it slices it up into different times. So if we go into this one here, we can see we've sliced it up. Let's go to the frame speed and just change that. Go nice and low so it's obvious. Not that low. So slow to fast to very slow. So coming back into the wave then, we'll start off and just take a quick look at additive. If you don't know what additive synthesis is, effectively you start off with nothing and you add the harmonics, hence additive. If we go into this one here, let's go to partial one, which was the additive wave. We've got that on a square at the minute, and you can see the square wave harmonics that you get from a square for play a key. Don't know if that's showing up. I think it should. There we've got a square. If we filter that down, you end up with a sine like normal synthesis. Subtractive synthesis, not normal synthesis. Okay, back into the wave then. With this, we've got this really neat way of creating the different wave shapes, or the standard wave shapes, using this quick wave function. So triangle, they're the harmonics you get from a triangle. Back into edit, let's go to a sine. We should just get one. There we go. And that's a sine. And then go to a ramp. So sawtooth, you've got them all. But this means you can create really complex wave shapes if you like. So if we go back into one of these and we define them, so we've got 24 different harmonics, 1 to 8, 9 to 16, and 17 to 24. And as I showed earlier, we can pick which harmonics we're playing around with. Let's go and just create it as a sine to start with, shall we? So we've got a single harmonic. Go to define, let's add some. Nice, sounds a bit like an organ, doesn't it? If we go and look at the wave shape now, we've got a nice complex wave shape. Let's add some more. Get much more complex. So that's additive synthesis, simple as that. We've also got extra parameters in here, so we can go and we can change the phase of the carrier, but you can hear it's doing different things to the voice there. And that's way beyond what I ever do with it, to be honest. But if you're into your additive synthesis, it's all in there. So back to the wave, subtractive synthesis. We can pick from a saw, square, or noise, but it's not just a standard saw, it's a super saw. Got it on 3 voices there. Let's come down to a single voice. Oops. But yeah, we've got up to 9 different voices and unison detune. So let's put a few more voices on actually, shall we? Let's go to the whole 9. Nice big fat sound. Stereo spread. And while I'm using this slider, I'll just show you quickly. We can go through the values using the slider like this, or let's go to the unison detune because there's more values in that. If we hold the bottom one, we go through slower. And if we tap them, we go through much slower. So we're going through really fine tuning parameters there. On this, as you saw, we've got a super square as well. So let's go to the square. Let's go back down to a single voice, shall we? Pulse width. So you got everything that you want to do on a virtual analog in this, really. Well, with a saw and a square at least. Filter roll off. So you can really go in and shape these things. It's almost a triangle, isn't it? Let's try that with the saw. When we're using that unison, we don't get chorus, so we've got chorus at the minute. And this is like the chorus on the original Synclavier. It used to use another voice on the Synclavier because it's such a distinct tone. So it is basically adding another voice there, isn't it? If we go into unison mode and we put in more than one voice, we'll lose the chorus. So yeah, you can't select the chorus anymore. But it's pretty chorusy already, isn't it? Okay, so we're up to additive, subtractive, then we've got samples. So let's just pull up one that I've got samples on, number 6. Let's turn one off. That's just a sample of a Minimoog. The filter that you're hearing on there, it's from the Minimoog as well. So you can just do straight up samples if you want, and this is spread across the whole keyboard. But you can chop it up into layers. I've got another one in here, I think it's this one. This is a Prodigy. Just a Prodigy square. Again, that's just a single sample going over the whole of the keyboard. Now I could loop this. It's quite a long sample anyway, but let's just show you how you loop and trim. So go into loop, put it on always loop, loop start. And this is where I think Loopop showed that this was taking him ages. But actually now they've made this so you can go really quickly through it. So that's the loop start. Here's the loop end. Whoops, loop end. Is that loop jet? There you go, there's a loop point. So to find that 0 point takes a little bit of time if you want to do that, but you can go into individual samples. This is sample accurate, and I'll show that later when I look at some wavetable style stuff. In fact, let's just show it now. Here's some 512 sample long single cycle samples from my Prophet VS. This one, I really like this one. It's beautiful, that, isn't it? Anyway, let's go into the wave. We can see the wave is just a single cycle. If we go into the loop and trim, we can see it's loop start at 0, loop end at 511, so it's 512 long. And we can go in and really fine tune that. So go to the loop end, for example, and change it. And you can hear the little buzz now. I've got the loop point in the wrong place. But it does mean that you can use this sort of sample. If we go really low, sounds like the VS. And then, as you saw before, we've got frames. And to use the frames, we go back into the wave, and we'll go up to hybrid. We analyze the wave, we go to analyze, and then we have the frame count, so how accurate it's going to be. And the hybrid attack leaves the attack portion as it is, leaves the initial transient as it is. Your brain sort of works out what a sound is from those initial attack portions, which is how things like LA synthesis work. And so, yeah, so we use that attack setting just to leave that transient in place. Frame count, change the number of frames up here. And let's just do it. It's done it. Go and listen to it. And then play with the frames, so the frame speed, as we saw earlier. But what I didn't get until I started playing with it is that no matter what type of wave you're using, we've got a modulator wave as well. So whether you're using additive, subtractive, or samples, or hybrid, you've still got a modulator wave that goes with anything. So those modulator waves, you create those the same way as you create the additive waves. So you go to modulator, and then we can, you know, we've got a sine there, which is what a DX7 uses. So if we come over to the envelope, let's turn the level of that modulator up. But let's use one of the other tones, shall we? Let's use tone 1 because it's a straight tone. Let's take the chorus off that, double clicking, resets it. Okay, so we'll go back into the wave. I'm going to modulate that with a sine. So let's turn this into a sine. There we go. Add the level. So that's the FM amount, basically, and this is the ratio, so the tuning of the modulator. And you can do this no matter what you're using, so you can do it on samples as well. So let's use it on the Prodigy Sawtooth. So go to the modulator, we've got a simple sine, modulator over here, let's turn it up. And we can use an envelope to modulate that as well. So we've got an ADSR envelope here. So let's modulate, let's change the attack. Go into the carrier, let's add a bit of release. Let's add some release to the modulator. And all that's just using a sine wave, but let's go back to the simple square, it just makes things easier to hear. So go to the modulator on this, sine, level of the modulator. And then let's change that modulator, so let's turn it into a triangle. And of course, we can go into this and then we can change the harmonics on that as well. So let's do a few, shall we? Well, that's the phases. Let's do the actual. And you'll notice when you've got more than one of anything picked, the swiper changes the parameters relative to what they were. Pick up a load. So if we look at the wave shape we're getting now, all sorts of madness. And then we can still filter on top of that as well. So loads based on old synthesis, and it's like a classic synth. We get all those really nice, dirty sounds that people really like from Silent. So really modern tones, and we can modulate that. For example, let's go into the modulation routing, and let's look for LFOA, and we'll edit the FM amount. There we go. If we edit the range, we can edit the range for different partials. And let's actually pick the one I'm listening to. Again, these buttons on the right-hand side have changed colour depending on what you're doing. So the ones I've picked are lit up in blue. The ones I've not picked to change the range on are still white. But we're only listening to one anyway. But yeah, you can see you can change the shape. Do all sorts of different things with this. So really deep. Don't want to go into too much, but hopefully you're getting a feel for how it works. Not really looked at the samples yet, so let's load something else, shall we? Let's load something I know's got a load of samples in it. 80s drums, let's go into that. 80s drums with reverb, let's load that one. If we go in, oh, it's nice that, isn't it? Let's go into the wave. So always make sure you're in the carrier wave, not the modulator wave, if that's what you want to look at. That can be confusing every now and then. We've got a single layer on this. You can select layers depending on the mod wheel, random or velocity. So I'm using the same velocity. I'm just using lots of different files in this. So go back, pressing the blue button. They're all the different files I've got in here. And I'm using the reverb from the Regen itself. So if we come into here, effects, Timbres reverb. Some of these samples do have reverb already, but that doesn't. Nice, isn't it? I like that little bit of slapback. Very 80s to me. And you can crossfade between the samples. You can crossfade between partials as well, which is quite unique to this. The note effects, so this filter here works on all the sounds within the partial. So all 12, if you have 12 different partials, they'd all be modulated or affected by this filter. So if we turn the filter on, we've got different types. Put a low pass filter setup. And we do have envelopes with this filter, as you'd expect, on the synth engine. Again, this wasn't on the original Synclavier. So if we come across, we've got, let's put a decay time, sustain level. And these are really odd envelopes, actually. They're sort of quite unique in a way. Start level, let's have the start level there. Attack time, peak level, so we can change that. And then we go to the sustain level. So you can see it's, the way it interacts is, let's just get the attack time down. It's a bit unique. Let's try an arpeggiator, shall we, with the drum samples. Let's see what that does. Different modes here, polyphonic, polyretrigger, mono. I'm not going to go into all of this. So yeah, that sits across the note effects. Then we've got the timbre effects as well. And we've also got another filter on this. If we go into the effects there, come back, we've got Bit Crusher, Grunge. Let's take the arpeggiator off, shall we? And let's take that effect off. Bit Crush. So we've got Bit Crush, we've got an effect filter and a reverb. This filter doesn't have an envelope on it. But it's really easy to control that with the controller keyboard on the intro track, that sort of 80s style intro track. I was using this filter on all the tracks, controlled via the knobs on the keylab. So you can't modulate with an envelope, but you can modulate it. So it is really useful actually. But it's a bit like an EQ on the end of the chain almost. We've also got FM on this as well. So we've got FM on the whole timbre. So all the partials together rather than just the individual timbres. So, and then in levels here, we've got access to panning and volumes. If I load in a session and go to levels, we can see we've got different levels for each of the tracks. And I've turned those down while I've been playing with them. So that was a real whistle-stop tour of the oscillator section, trying to get through it without getting too deep and too bogged down with everything in there. But yeah, so once you've figured that out, the next thing you do is start experimenting and start creating your own tones. So my explorations led me to making this little patch bank, Starsky's Prodigy. It's available for free from the Synclavier website. I thought it was worth sharing. So let's go into that. Got a little description, which is where having the keyboard plugged in or a keyboard plugged in is very handy. We'll load in the raw oscillators first to show you what I've started with. And then I've just started creating tones with it. Some of these I've used FM on. I think I did like a nice little piano sound, digi piano bass. I think this is just two sawtooths. If we go into the partials, let's just solo them. So one's just a sawtooth and the other one is a sawtooth that's been modulated. And that's a really simple example of using FM to do something different with a sample, but it's quite nice. Let's go back in and see what else we've got. A resonance saw. Again, is this using filter envelope, decay time? Yeah, this is using the onboard filter, sequence bass saws, piano chord. So it looks like I'm using 4 different partials for 4 different tunings. Nice. He says, house stab. So just playing around with as Prodigy. You'd have thought you'd get that from a Prodigy. Got a nice little 12 saws. So a big detuned 12 oscillator tone. This is the Prodigy sync tone put into frames so you can change the speed of the envelope. Let's try that. Let's go into frame speed. And you can hear that hybrid attack parameter keeping the transients in there. So you might want to go and change that. But what else? I'm just showing you explorations I've had with this, really. Oh, nice sound effect that, isn't it? So after you've started exploring, you've started creating your own tones, the next thing you do is start creating sessions. This is really the sort of acceptance phase where you understand that everything works and you just start using it, having fun with it. Okay, I've loaded the session. It's the 80s sounding track from the intro. I know I keep on referring back to this, but it's really handy to show you how I've been using it. If we go into the levels, I'm now looking at all the track levels and I'm using the faders on the Keylab like a mixer. And I'm using the knobs for the cutoffs. And I'm using the timbre cutoff here, so the effect cutoff, rather than the note effects, which is the one that's got the envelope on. I'm just using this like you would a tweakable filter. Using the same on these tones as well. So nice, just a nice mix of different types of tones. Some ambient stuff, some drums, analog style tones. And this is all being sequenced by Logic, by the way. Yeah, so just a really quick overview of how I've ended up using this and the sort of fun I've been having with it. So after acceptance, we just have enjoyment. Well, you may well have gathered after watching that I'm a bit of a fan of the Synclavier Regen. It's got a real charm, it's got a real character, it feels like its own little thing, and you do approach it, or you can approach it in a different way than you approach lots of things, which is great for creativity because it takes you out of your comfort zone, it takes you out of the box that you normally work in, and it puts you somewhere else, and you start mixing and matching and doing different things that you wouldn't normally do, and you just find different stuff, which is always great. So yeah, I really like it. There will be times when you're playing with it and you can't figure something out, and why is LFOB the only one that, well, that will be free running, for example. Odd little things here and there, but there's probably a reason for it at some point, and a lot of it harps back to the old Synclaviers. But in general, I say in general, just overall positive for me. It does take a bit of time to get to grips with it, but once it's clicked, and you're done. Every now and then, you know, maybe in the demo even will have been pushing the wrong button and pushing the wrong slider at a time. But you know, it's no biggie to me, that at all. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please think about subscribing, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon, where I've got patches, I've got samples, I've got Patreon exclusive content, all for the price of an iced half-calf ristretto venti 4-pump sugar-free cinnamon dolce soy skinny latte a month. Or check out my starskycar.com website. Again, there's patches and samples there you can download, there's stuff you can buy, and there's free stuff. But do take a look at the cheaper packs on there, £3 for a 606 through various distortion units. Nice little pack, and it just helps to support the channel. Anyway, thanks very much for sticking to the very end. If you do want to hear my sounds that I made for it on my Starsky Sounds YouTube channel that I've got just for doing things like that, patches and the like, they're all on there. Most of them I do a little run through. I'll put a link in the description. But anyway, thanks a lot, and I will see you next time.